The Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 16. Interesting. Too interesting. A mediocre person, abandoned by Jiang Zuqing, has actually appeared in front of her to duel. Haha, I really want to know what Jiang Zuqing is thinking right now. The two people went on stage. Jiang Zuqing's snow-like eyes showed no change. She looked at Suyu like he was a stranger, with coldness in her eyes. Even Suyu entering the top silver ranking did not make her feel any sense of remorse. Suyu, admit defeat. You are not my match, you weren't before, you aren't now, and you will never be. Jiang Zuqing's had no trace of warmth. Suyu's expression was cool, looking at her like looking at a stranger, remaining silent. To this kind of self-absorbed, heartless woman, even one sentence would be a waste of his saliva and energy. He just silently waited for the judge's command to announce the start of the duel. He did not want to say anything more to her. Receiving silence as a reply, Jiang Zuqing took him as being stubborn and refusing to admit defeat. Shaking her head and raising her eyebrows slightly, disgust filled Jiang Zuqing's eyes as she said, "No repentance. Coming from a poor background, you should watch your attitude. Being stubborn and not admitting defeat, what does it do for you besides make you suffer? Do you know why I left you? It's precisely because you have no skills, no background, yet you protect your pitiful self-esteem, causing me to be looked down upon by other people as well." Jiang Zuqing scolded, as though she had remembered the past and was releasing all her resentment. "So, I left you, and chose my own life. Do you see, the past me was even worse than you, but the present me is far ahead. We will continue to go further and further away from each other." Jiang Zuqing's shoulders shook slightly, a look of relief on her face, as she felt she had finally taken the right path. Looking over at Suyu again, Jiang Zuqing's pupils returned to their cold and expressionless state as she said, "You, Suyu, are not good enough for me. You weren't good enough before, and you will not be good enough in the future. Remember my words, you will never be good enough for me. You will never be good enough for me." These words were shouted out in front of thousands of people, in front of the whole institute. The audience looked at each other, some with sympathy, some gloating, and some were disgusted. In a secret location, a lady who looked like a celestial beauty frowned slightly, her gaze sweeping over Jiang Zuqing with some dislike. Her gaze jumped to Suyu. The celestial beauty's eyes had a hint of sympathy and warmth. "So, he is called Suyu. He is a martial arts genius with good training talent, yet he is treated this way. That Jiang Zuqing will regret this next time." Jiang Zhishi jeered silently. To fight for a woman with the junior duke would only have a tragic ending. Suyu initially wanted to ignore her, but the more this woman talked, the more ridiculous she became. As if her throwing herself into someone else's arms was entirely Suyu's fault. This kind of logic was just unreasonable. Stretching his back lazily, Suyu shook his head and said, "You are already a whore, so there is no need to build a sign for it, all right. You yourself are vain, throwing yourself into another man's arms, yet you push the blame on me. Besides that, please do not feel self-absorbed. I, Suyu, am really not interested in pretentious girls like you," Suyu said coolly, gazing at Jiang Zuqing as if she was a stranger. The crowd went wild. Suyu, who used to kneel before Jiang Zuqing and plead with her to change her mind. Suyu, who once threw himself into the lake due to emotional problems. He actually called Jiang Zuqing a whore in front of the audience. Not only was the crowd shocked, Jiang Zuqing herself was stunned. In her memories, Suyu had always coaxed her like a baby, afraid that she would break in his hand, never raising his voice. When he saw she was unhappy, he would be so scared that he wouldn't even dare to breathe heavily. When she scolded him, not only would he not dare to get angry, but he would smile along with it. She never thought that Suyu would ever call her a whore with the whole crowd watching. For a split second, she even wondered whether the person standing in front of her was Suyu. It felt like two completely different people. Recovering, Jiang Zuqing's pristine face was flushed. Where was her dignity in front of the whole institute? She hadn't thought about the way she scolded Suyu like useless trash, telling him he would never be good enough for her. Why wouldn't his dignity be lost then? Chasing to the root of the issue, she only saw herself in her selfish eyes and never cared about Suyu's feelings. Jiang Zuqing felt countless pairs of eyes on her, and wished she could bury herself in the ground. She had never been this ashamed in her whole life. A wave of resentment, strong resentment, rose up in her. Suyu, I hate you. Anger and hatred filled Jiang Zuqing's eyes. Hate as you wish. Suyu shrugged lightly. Her hate could not cause a reaction in his heart. Finishing his sentence, Suyu turned to look at the judge. I say, Jiang Zishi, haven't you watched enough of the show? The duel was actually due to start a long time ago, but the person with the surname Jiang was happy to see Suyu being made fun of, so he pretended to be sorting documents to delay the start time. Annoyance flashed through Jiang Zhishi's eyes, and he was just about to give a scolding, when he was met with Housemaster Yi's dissatisfied look. This duel had already been put off for a very long time. Knowing that it could not be delayed any longer, he could only swallow his anger and announce, the fight starts now. Suyu, I will not let you off. Full of hatred, Jiang Zuqing pounced forward crazily, starting the fierce fight. Colorful flying ribbons. Jiang Zuqing took her shot in anger. Colorful flying ribbons was a medium-level technique. 3 colorful ribbons shot out from her sleeve and danced on her palms. One ribbon scraped the floor, and took a layer of it off like a knife. If it scraped a human body, it would scrape off a layer of meat. Jiang Zuqing is taking a vicious shot. Just watch, if Suyu is not the enemy, he should know to surrender and admit defeat, he is not dumb. Jiang Zuqing was heartless. There was only one thought on her mind, which was to torture him, to use extreme torture on this damn man. Don't you dare to think you are going to leave this arena unharmed. Hearing the threatening words, Suyu's expression remained cool. The instant the colorful ribbons attacked, both his fists and legs were prepared. Universal stroke. The opponent's 3 colorful ribbons appeared to be twisting at the same time, but Suyu's eyesight was excellent and he could see that the twisting had a rhythm. He just had to break them one by one, and he could thwart the move. Instantly, he showed his hand. First was a punch to the first colorful ribbon, swiftly and accurately fending it off from the side. After that, with almost no gap in the flow, a leg attacked and kicked off the second ribbon which was about to attack. Immediately following that, a fist punched the last ribbon. Finally, his leg kicked out like a whip, landing precisely on Jiang Zuqing's chest. Jiang Zuqing's face paled and she instantly blocked it with both her arms as she felt the sudden wave of enormous force. What was even scarier was that her opponent's fists and legs did not stop, coming down on her continuously like intense rain, not giving her any chance to take a breath. 4 continuous hits. 8 continuous hits. 16 continuous hits. Finally, Jiang Zuqing could not bear the enormous power. After a cry, she was kicked off the arena by Suyu. That was Suyu's first time displaying all of Universal Stroke, and it was displayed on his Xlova. He never showed any mercy. Standing on the arena, Suyu looked at Jiang Zuqing, who was injured and had fallen to the ground. Her eyes showed her shock, and she said coolly, "It looks like you are not as strong as you thought. In the past, you were not as good as me, and now you are still not as good as me." Hearing his words, she didn't look at him and returned to the center of the arena, closing her eyes to take a rest. I was actually defeated. Level 3. Lost to a level 2. And lost to the man that I once dumped. She felt that on her training journey, she had dumped Suyu far, but in reality, Suyu had dumped her. Jiang Zuqing was unable to accept the harsh reality. In her eyes, Suyu was just a weak and cowardly man with mediocre qualifications. But today, after she had improved by leaps and bounds, just when she thought she could be the star of the day and rise to the top, her opponent shot out his hand and slapped her down from the sky. Such harsh reality was like a bucket of cold water pouring down, freezing her internally. Qin Feng rushed over, staring at Suyu angrily. He then went to support Jiang Zuqing by the arm, but was rejected by her. Struggling to get up, Jiang Zuqing's eyes were full of hatred, and she said coldly, "Brother Feng. Help me to defeat him. You just have to defeat him. I will be yours." Jiang Zuqing's gaze was firm. She knew that Qin Feng was after her looks, and she knew even more surely that was all she had to attract Qin Feng. She did not let Qin Feng touch her easily because that was her only capital. Qin Feng was overjoyed, his heart beating loudly. For everything, he just had to defeat Suyu. According to the Institute's rules, gold students were unable to challenge silver students, in order to protect the silver students from bullying. However, there was an exception. That was at the golden assessment a month later. The top 3 gold students could invite the top 3 silver students to duel, to showcase the difference between gold and silver and encourage silver students to improve. The silver students chosen could not reject. All right, in a month, I will easily defeat him, and achieve the honor of the Gold King at the same time. Qin Feng was elated. By their agreement, after achieving the Gold King title, Jiang Zuqing would agree to be engaged to him. After becoming the Gold King, he could get everything. Qin Feng was excited, and couldn't wait for the month to pass. No, a month is too long, I can't wait. Every day that Suyu was around would be another day that she would not sleep well. Qin Feng's head sobered up a little. He thought for a while and said gloomily, how about I think of a way to chase him out of the institute? Jiang Zuqing coldly replied, good. Disrupt his future. Jiang Zuqing was very afraid that Suyu will become better and better, afraid that she would be filled with regret one day. Color flashed past Housemaster Yi's pupils as he praised, what an amazing boy. A hard skill like universal stroke was trained to stage 3 upper class, just a step away from entering the top class with infinite hits. Having defeated Jiang Zuqing, Suyu's popularity instantly peaked, with cheers for him everywhere. Suyu could actually counterattack, defeating Jiang Zuqing, who dumped him. The Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 17. Suyu has completely shed himself of his past humiliation. Zhu Sen sighed, envious and dejected. The atmosphere in the audience was excited. Suyu, the dark horse, was, indeed, incredibly powerful. He was the highlight of the day. Chen Tianan stared at the arena coldly, his expression cruel. I never thought he could achieve this. Chen Feng clenched his fists. No matter how strong he is, he will never match up to my brother. He said bitterly. Everyone in the crowd was excited about Suyu's next fight. Semi-finals. The last fight, Suyu versus Shuan Leffey. Shuan Leffey's power was beyond description. Zhu Sen had been easily defeated at her hands. Hey, little brother is so strong, you'll have to show big sister some mercy later. Shuan Leffey was all smiles, but deep within her eyes, she held a cold edge. Before he left, Li Minghao had instructed her to viciously punish the boy. He told her to let the purple-blooded bats give him 2 bites, so he would be poisoned, only then should she begin punching. Suyu smiled as he held up his hands. Senior, please be sure to show some mercy. The fight starts now, Jiang Zixi announced harshly. Shuan Leffey happily tapped her colorful pocket. Out flew 2 purple-blooded bats. Suyu was waiting. The further away you were, the less dangerous the bat's ultrasound was. In order to avoid the ultrasound attacks, the best thing to do was to stay a good distance from the bats. But the 2 bats were super fast, and Zhu Sen was unable to hide from the approach of the bats. Thus, he was defeated by Shuan Leffey. Go! Shuan Leffey whistled. Poosh! The 2 purple-blooded bats immediately flew towards Suyu with blindingly fast speed. There would be no more hiding. Shuan Leffey was too strong. Any little mistake would end in her defeat. Cloud Shadow. Suyu grunted deeply. He finally displayed the light body cultivation technique that he had been hiding for so long. His shadow was like the wind, his light body like the shadow of a cloud, moving around freely with ease. Suyu was like drifting duckweed, gliding along within a glimpse. The audience only saw a blur, yet Suyu had moved 10 feet with his incredible speed. Suyu was more than double the speed of the purple-blooded bats. Shuan Leffey hid by the side as she secretly waited for Suyu to be poisoned. How could she have known Suyu was hiding such a difficult technique? Shuan Leffey realized the bad situation she was suddenly in and swiftly called the bats back as she spread her feet to run away. How could she get Suyu where she wanted him? The speed of the cloud shadow technique at level 1 top class was not any slower than Shuan Leffey. In the small space of the arena, both traveling at the same speed, there was not much room to run. After a while, Shuan Leffey was both surprised and angry. She had to fight Suyu face to face. Universal stroke. In close combat, Suyu did not hesitate to display his strongest attack technique. At that moment, the purple-blooded bats behind him surged nearer. Suyu had to end the fight, fast. Xuan Leffey also realized the situation, and retaliated desperately. She tried to hold off Suyu and wait for the purple-blooded bats, so they could catch up to them and she could regain control. Xuan Leffey was good at controlling demonic beasts, not at close combat. The universal Stokes punches and kicks were extremely fast and had no brakes. They struck her like raindrops, pelting downwards. The 16 consecutive hits felt stretched through time, yet, they only actually occurred within a single breath of space. Ah! The last kick was extraordinarily strong. Xuan Leffey was hit in the chest and she fell off the arena. At that time, the purple-blooded bats slowed their flying. Having lost their owner, they stopped their attack and returned to their owner's side. Xuan Leffey covered her painful chest, her cheeks red with embarrassment as she stared at Suyu angrily. Really, dare to kick anywhere. Losing this fight was not her fault. The opponent had managed to hide such a powerful technique. If she had known about his skills, she would have never lost. But, ultimately, she had lost. She exited the venue unwillingly. As she passed through a dark channel, Qin Feng appeared brightly. Xuan Leffey, complete a task, and you will get a top-grade spirit elixir. Xuan Leffey's face changed color and she shouted, top-grade spirit elixir. A low-grade spirit elixir required 100 taels of silver, a middle-grade elixir required 500 taels of silver. But, the top-grade spirit elixir required 2,500 taels of silver. It would be impossible for her to get so many taels of silver, even if she spent the whole year hunting in the Twilight Mountains. Besides someone with a prominent family background like the junior duke, who else could afford to provide so much silver? What do you need me to do? Obviously, I'm not letting you touch me. Xuan Leffey's pupils were fiery, but she did not forget Qin Feng's previous propositions. Qin Feng pursed his lips apathetically. Why would he be interested in Xuan Leffey when he was about to get Jiang Zuqing? You better do this well. Qin Feng handed over a piece of paper, carefully aware of their surroundings. Written on the paper was the task required of Xuan Leffey. After she had remembered it, he burned the paper, leaving no trace. This was a crucial moment for his father, and Qin Feng, as his son, could not cause any additional trouble. Xuan Leffey was surprised upon seeing the task. She hesitated for a moment, clenched her teeth and agreed, okay. But, you have to give me the spirit elixir first. Qin Feng thought about it and nodded slightly. He handed it over, grimacing. Although he was the junior duke, it did not mean he had unlimited silver to burn. His monthly allowance was only around 3,000 taels of silver. But, for today, he actually took out the top-grade spirit elixir, worth 2,500 taels of silver. The task must be completed. That said, Qin Feng blended into the darkness. With his identity and family background, he doubted Xuan Leffey would have the courage to steal the spirit elixir and run away without finishing the task. Xuan Leffey nodded her head, smiled, and replied, of course. Turning back to look in Suyu's direction, Xuan Leffey smiled sweetly. Sorry little brother, for big sister's spirit elixir, just sacrifice yourself. In the arena, Jiang Zixi was in disbelief. After a long time, he took a deep breath and coldly announced, semi-finals, Suyu is the winner. In the VIP seats, Housemaster Yi's face showed a strange expression. It was rare for his indifferent face to have a trace of a happy smile. Suyu mastered light body cultivation techniques such as cloud shadow, which even gold students can't successfully train, yet he is able to comprehend it. It is rather surprising. How could he have known that Suyu could cheat with time-space manipulation? While others studied for 1 day, Suyu studied for 10 days. For every 10 days others studied, Suyu had studied for 100. As such, the light body cultivation technique, while difficult for others to train, was possible for Suyu. The audience bubbled with excitement. The fight for the Silver King, the final fight, was finally about to start. Suyu, go for it. Defeat Chen Tian'an. The students' blood boiled with excitement, especially the silver students who have been in the middle and lower reaches for a long time. Defeat him, and you'll be the next Silver King. In their mind, the Silver King was the Supreme King. He was a person to be respected. It was a position they could never touch. However, Suyu, who, like him, existed in the bottom silver level, could counterattack and fight for the crown against the dazzling Silver King. In that instant, Suyu became the spiritual sustenance for countless low-level silver students. He represented their dreams. He had become the black horse for them to wish upon. The crowd went wild. They roared, cried, and screamed as their blood boiled from the heat of their hope. People growled crazily all around. It created an impactful sound which spread throughout the entire institute. No one could keep calm, no one could keep still, and no one could deny the state of the people around them. Everyone was affected by the fierce energy within them. The strongest black horse in history would be fighting against the strongest Silver King for the supreme crown. Jiang Zishi squinted and shouted loudly, "Silver King! Chen Tian'an, enter the arena! Chen Tian'an, enter the arena! Enter the arena!" The echoing shout built upon the crowd's energy and excited their blood. The cries stirred their hearts even further. Chen Tian'an, the silver crown on his head, rose up from the one and only silver throne. An air of superiority and power rose with him in a magnificent wave. "Very good. The fact you got this far is enough for me to go all out on you." Chen Tian'an, the strongest of all the silver, slowly walked over. Chen Feng gazed at his elder brother's back, his eyes filled with respect. Stepping into the arena, Chen Tian'an took off his crown. Jiang Zishi took back the crown, and announced, "The fight for the Silver King title officially starts now. The winner will be the new Silver King." Chen Tian'an stood with his arms folded and did not attack. He only stared at Suyu coldly, and calmly said, "Give it a shot. Otherwise, you won't have the chance to show your hand." While it would have sounded cocky coming from someone else, the audience understood it was a legitimate statement coming from the powerful Silver King. Suyu laughed lightly, "No thanks. The champion today is the Silver King, and the tactics are open and honest. I don't need any tricks." Chen Tian'an's expression was cold and his voice was hoarse and harsh. "You're brave, pity you don't know your strength. How can a firefly fight for brightness against the moon? How powerful did you find Shuan Leffey?" Chen Tian'an asked suddenly. Suyu pondered slightly and gave a fair appraisal. "Very strong. Then let me tell you, a week ago, she challenged me. She was defeated by one move," Chen Tian'an said indifferently. The crowd began to stir into a commotion. Shuan Leffey was actually defeated by one move. Whoa, the Silver King is indeed the strongest, so scary. Suyu's eyes were serious. Chen Tian'an was the strongest opponent he had ever met. But he would definitely not admit defeat. "You've never fought me though, how do you know how this will end?" Suyu took a deep breath and shifted into a fighting stance. Chen Tian'an stood with his hands folded and calmly said, "All right, I shall, reluctantly, make the first attack." Angry King Kong Buddha. Chen Tian'an grunted lowly. His skin glowed with a light bronze color. He looked like a living copper statue. A look of surprise crossed Housemaster Yi's face. "Not bad. A basic level technique like Angry King Kong Buddha has been trained to the top class by Chen Tian'an. His skin and flesh are indestructible. Attacks will not easily harm him." Ghost Spirit Technique. Chen Tian'an immediately shouted again, displaying another technique. The fingernails on his two hands slowly turned a nasty and ghostly green color, an eerie gloom seeping from his fingertips. His eyes turned scarlet and his lips began to turn a grayish-green color. From a distance, Chen Tian'an seemed like a demon, ready to battle. Even one look would make your heart turn cold. Housemaster Yi's face was full of shock. Ghost Spirit Technique is a medium-level technique that is close to an advanced level technique, and he has already trained it to level 2. That's impressive. Suyu instantly felt a cool breeze, and the thick sense of danger crashed in on him. He was especially wary of those 10 green poison claws. Suyu was sure a brush with those would be incredibly dangerous. Whoosh! Chen Tian'an's one step was 10 feet long, and, 3 steps later, he was nearly on top of Suyu. The eerie demon claws viciously swiped at Suyu's chest, but Suyu was ready. He immediately used the cloud shadow trick, and, like floating duckweed, he narrowly dodged the attack. SSSSSs. Suyu managed to avoid the attack, but a corner of his shirt was touched by a nasty green fingernail. The thick robe made with white cloth started erupting into green pus, a hissing sound seeping from the fabric. The Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 18. What strong poison! Suyu's expression wavered, but he did not panic. Instead, Suyu took advantage of the moments between one attack and the next. Universal stroke. Suyu saw his opportunity and grabbed it, swiftly attacking. His fists and legs attacked fluidly, one limb following the other seamlessly. Once a punch was done, a kick came. The attack was extremely powerful and relentless. Chen Tianan had no choice but to use his arms to guard his chest against the onslaught. Clank. Strangely, however, each time Suyu's fists and feet made contact with Chen Tianan, it felt as though he were attacking solid steel. Chen Tianan was knocked back half a step with each hit. After 16 consecutive hits, he had merely moved back 8 steps and was unharmed. The defense of the angry King Kong Buddha was amazing. It's no use. How can a firefly fight for brightness against the moon? With a cold smile, Chen Tianan took advantage of the moment Suyu's attack ended, aiming another attack towards Suyu's chest. SSSS's. Suyu dodged, but the front part of his shirt melted. One attack had been ineffective. Suyu's face was serious, but his eyes shined bright. During his attack, after Suyu realized Chen Tianan's skin was impenetrable, Suyu immediately began searching for other weaknesses in Chen Tianan's defense. Though he only had a moment to analyze Chen Tianan during his attack, Suyu still managed to find something strange. When Chen Tianan used the ghost spirit technique, angry King Kong Buddha paused for a moment and a palm-sized circle of muscle on his chest returned to its normal skin color. To use both techniques simultaneously would require extreme coordination, which Chen Tianan had apparently not yet mastered. Unfortunately, the small break in Chen Tianan's defenses was short and rare. It only appeared when Chen Tianan attacked, making it too dangerous to counter directly. While thinking, Suyu dodged continuously and continued to counterattack. Chen Tianan and Suyu danced through time, weaving around each other as they crisscrossed across the arena. They were shadows, fluttering in and out of view. 1 move, 2 moves, 3 moves, 4 moves. Even after 16 moves, they were still evenly matched. Although Chen Tianan was powerful, Suyu's techniques were not bad. Neither opponent had yet obviously pulled ahead in the fight. Of course, Chen Tianan firmly held the advantage. A cold smile played beneath Chen Tianan's eyes. Suyu could defeat Shuan Leffey, and he was indeed strong for lasting so long against Chen Tianan, but his defeat was inevitable. Head Judge Jiang Zhishi was secretly pleased with Suyu's struggle, but his expression was fair as he said, "Suyu, if you only dodge and refuse to fight all 10 rounds, Chen Tianan will be declared the winner." Oh, the audience felt that was unfair. Suyu had not been defeated, he just had the lower hand. Such a rule was obviously made in order to put more pressure on Suyu. Frowning, Suyu gave Jiang Zhishi a cold look. He had defeated his son, Jiang Fan, so he bore a grudge and was biased against Suyu. As such, Suyu was forced to use his special tactic. Suyu stopped his sequence of dodging and retreating and faced his opponent face to face. Finally stopped hiding. Ghost spirit technique. Chen Tianan declared viciously. The nasty green nails left a string of broken lines in the air. Suyu's eyes suddenly changed to a murky crystalline shade. Time and space slowed. Chen Tianan's every action was slowed down by 300%. The weak spot in Chen Tianan's chest became obvious and distinct in the drawn-out time. Universal stroke. Suyu grunted. In other people's eyes, Suyu's speed was suddenly 3 times faster than usual. Whoosh. 16 consecutive hits were finished in a brief's time. Bang, bang, bang. Chen Tianan spat out a mouthful of blood as he flew backward. What is going on? How did his opponent's speed suddenly rise to level 4 lower tier? Housemaster Yi was shocked. Chen Tianan was in disbelief. How could it be? But the state of his displaced body confirmed the seemingly impossible attack which Suyu had just pulled off. He was about to lose. A hint of viciousness flashed through Chen Tianan's cold eyes. Even if I do lose, don't you dare expect an easy victory. Whoosh. A ray of black lights emitted from Chen Tianan's eyes. It was extremely fast. The audience only saw a blur before the black light enveloped Suyu's body. Suyu's whole body vibrated. It felt as though an unknown creature had barged into his brain and was wreaking havoc. Suyu immediately understood what was happening. It was the legendary technique of the soul. The soul was one of man's weakest points. Attacking the soul could cause anything from minor illness to death. Housemaster Yi's face paled. Oh no, it's demonic eyes. With Suyu's skills, his mind could be permanently damaged. He could end up demented. The more he wanted to help, the further away he felt. An unexpected pain suddenly pierced Suyu's brain and his vulnerable soul trembled uneasily. The vicious corrosive air was rapidly destroying his brain. Sensing danger closing in, the 9 dragons and the 9-dragon cauldron entrenched within Suyu's brain vibrated, and a stream of spirit serum spilled out from the small cauldron. The pain in his brain rapidly diminished, and the unknown substance that had seeped into his head was killed by the wind and clouds. To outsiders, Suyu's body recovered after a mere shake. Only he truly knew the danger he had just faced. With a cold look, Suyu activated the cloud shadow trick and, with one step forward, he caught up to Xuanhuan, who had flown backward. Suyu condensed all his power into his fist and punched it hard into Xuanhuan's head. How is it possible that you are unharmed? Xuanhuan's face took the hit full on. His lips were smashed, fresh blood was spewing from his mouth and a few of his teeth scattered onto the ground. Suyu did not stop. He gave a kick toward Xuanhuan's waist. Crack. It sounded like bones breaking. Filled with anger, Suyu's fists and legs were attacked consecutively with no breaks in between. He only stopped once he'd hit Xuanhuan in midair all the way to below the arena. Wah! Falling heavily below the arena, Xuanhuan spat out a mouthful of blood before the immense pain throughout his whole body caused him to pass out. The crowd stared intently as they sucked in a breath of cool air. Not only did Xuanhuan have multiple broken bones, but his face was also badly beaten. He looked miserable and practically unrecognizable in his heavily injured state. Only once Xuanhuan landed upon the ground did the anger in Suyu's eyes start to diminish. If it were not for the 9-dragon cauldron, Suyu would have become demented. Xuanhuan was so vicious, how could he show mercy when Xuanhuan had refused to do the same? Jiang Zhixu's eyes were cloudy and uncertain. The student, whom the Duke wanted, dealt with, had become the Silver King. From that day onwards, everything would be different. No, I cannot let him become the Silver King. Jiang Zhixu thought. How brave. Jiang Zhixu gave a cold look and stood up. He leaped onto the arena with one jump. Fueled by anger, he grabbed Suyu. It is just a comparison test, yet you were so vicious. Stay in mule. The intense anger suppressed Suyu, making it difficult for him to retaliate. Jiang Zhixu was a powerful character at level 4 peak. How could Suyu withstand him? This senior was publicly taking out revenge against Suyu. Suyu was a changed person. Even though he was not facing the true enemy, he would not submit. Universal stroke. Suyu would not be suppressed, and so he retaliated. 2 hits. 4 hits. 8 hits. 16 hits. All consecutive hits. You dare to retaliate. The seriousness of your crime only increases with your actions. Jiang Zhixu's face was icy as he easily withstood the retaliation. Even after 16 consecutive hits, his body remained unmoved. A powerful palm smacked Suyu's skull. How was this only a capture? Jiang Zhixu was obviously taking advantage of the chance to seriously injure him. It seemed like Suyu was going to suffer a hit. Whoosh. Suddenly, a wisp of sharp air shot from the VIP seats within the audience. Puff. Jiang Zhixu was struck by the stream of air. Even though he was at level 4 peak, he could not withstand that one hit. Jiang Zhixu flew several feet, his mouth opened and blood spewed outwards. A bloody hole ripped open on the side of his waist, where he had been struck. What an embarrassment. A cold voice came from the VIP audience seats. Housemaster Yi's long white robe fluttered around him, his black hair flowing, his cold eyes filled with indifference. The students could not tell that Xuanhuan had used such a dangerous trick like the secret technique of the soul. Could it be that Jiang Zhixu had not realized either? It was one thing for Jiang Zhixu to stand and watch without blocking, but afterward, he did not investigate Xuanhuan, and instead only jumped at the chance to hit Suyu. It was an utter embarrassment. Jiang Zhixu was in pain. His mouth was full of blood and his heart was filled with hatred and fear. However, he did not defend himself. He could not air his grievances publicly, as causing a scene in front of such a large audience would deeply injure his reputation. As such, he only clenched his jaw and gave Suyu a silent glare before swiftly leaving as fast as his injured body would allow. Many students thought it was ridiculous. Suyu had seriously injured Chen Tian'an in a cruel manner, and Jiang Zhishi captured Suyu out of his duty as the judge, so why was Jiang Zhishi injured and punished? Housemaster Yi would not explain the matter. If he announced Jiang Zhishi's cowardly actions, it would be a black mark on the institute's reputation. In the fight for the Silver King title, Suyu is the champion. Housemaster Yi walked onto the stage and personally placed the silver crown on Suyu's head. Your performance was not bad, continue to work hard. You should aim to join the gold students in a month's time. With a slight smile, Housemaster Yi patted Suyu's shoulders before he turned to leave. Suyu's heart was filled with respect. He put his hands together and said, "Thank you, Housemaster." If not for the justice Housemaster Yi had established, Suyu might not have left the arena in one piece. Suyu became famous after that fight. The title of Silver King had changed hands from Chen Tian'an to Suyu. At the moment he was crowned, Suyu's student number plate shined a bright silver color with just a hint of gold. Soon, it would become a gold number plate. Hidden away, the celestial beauty gazed at Suyu from a distance. She gave a tranquil smile. A boy with handsome features and a lanky body stood beside her, handsome enough to make any woman swoon. At the corners of his peach-tinted eyes, however, brewed a glint of darkness. The handsome youth gave an absurd laugh. "Senior Chia, I did not expect you to be interested in a fight between the silvers," he said. His words implied that the silver assessment was very boring. Why would anyone wish to watch it? This impossibly beautiful youth was actually the Gold King, the strongest among the gold students, Fang Qingzhu. His qualifications were amazing, with skills at the level 4 top tier. Even among the gold students, there was no equal to Fang Qingzhu's skill. Not a single person had survived beyond 3 of Fang Qingzhu's attacks. He was undefeatable. He was also a popular bachelor, who was revered by many female students. There were negative rumors regarding Fang Qingzhu, however, which colored him as an unscrupulous playboy who had left many nice girls in extreme emotional distress. Some girls had faced harm as a result of their emotional state. When the girls were hurt by Fang Qingzhu's actions, however, he was never directly punished. The institute settled privately with the family of the victim. The celestial beauty was rather disgusted with Fang Qingzhu, and merely replied, "I just want to see if there are any rising stars." Fang Qingzhu made no attempts to hide his contempt. "No matter how strong a silver is, he is still trash that needs disposing of," he said mockingly. Although his words were harsh, they were true. The silver students were all unqualified. To call them trash was neither uncommon nor uncalled for within the institute. The celestial beauty frowned. "That may not be true. I am optimistic about the new Silver King. He improved very quickly." Once she finished her sentence, the celestial beauty turned to leave. Did she mean Suyu? Fang Qingzhu glanced at Suyu's back and frowned, shaking his head as he scoffed. "That's it, he's peaked. He will be in the lower levels for the rest of his life." As he muttered, he hurried and caught up with the celestial beauty. He watched her graceful shadow with a wicked look. The Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 19. Senior Chia, there's going to be a full moon in 2 weeks. Are you going to the ancient ruins? Fang Qingzhu fell half a step behind Chia as he greedily breathed in the beautiful woman's fragrance. That ancient ruins were in the Twilight Mountains. Fang Qingzhu had once stalked and pestered the celestial beauty until she went hunting with him, and together they had discovered the ruins in a secret location. Thus, the location became a shared secret between the two of them. Yes, after the Golden Assessment, the Institute's 10 great demon students will head to the imperial capital as representatives. Before leaving, I wish to study the mural at the ruins again. She replied. All right, I'll join you, Fang Qingzhu said. His eyes flashed wickedly. The celestial beauty raised her brows slightly, and nodded. All right then. After all, the ruins had been discovered by the both of them together. If he requested to come along, it was understandable. Also, Fang Qingzhu was powerful and intimidating. She did not have the strength or prestige required to decline him. Allude Fang Qingzhu watched the graceful shadow of the celestial beauty move away. With excitement building up in him, he licked his lips. She would be his, regardless of her intended future or feelings. That night, as Suyu dragged his tired body to his dorm, inside, he found multiple institute managers tidying his things. Wu Song was standing by the side courteously. He barely dared to breathe. "What's this?" Suyu asked. The leader was a level 4 middle-aged lady, her face indifferent. Looking back at Suyu, she stopped working and her apathetic expression turned into a warm smile. "You are the Silver King. Naturally, you shall have a better dorm." It turned out that all the past generations of Silver Kings had their own single courtyard, right beside the courtyards of 100 gold students. Not only was the environment clean, but the peaceful atmosphere was well suited for training. Moreover, any necessities were all specially provided by servants. Among the silver students, only the Silver King got such special treatment. Wu Song breathed in a mouthful of cool air, his expression mixed. Once upon a time, Suyu was just a punching bag, a piece of useless trash. But now he had shot to the sky and become the Silver King, who was above thousands of people. If I had only known Suyu was destined to be the Silver King, I would have developed a bond with him, but now. Under Wu Song's envy and jealousy, along with the other respectful eyes that peeked out from the corridors and bedrooms, Suyu left for his new home. Suyu was extremely pleased with the clean courtyard. He had 3 female servants to serve just him and quiet privacy away from people. He did not have to go to the mountains to train anymore, the courtyard would suffice. Power makes all the difference for how you're treated, I suppose. This is worlds away from how I was treated when I was considered weak, Suyu said quietly. Dismissing the servants, Suyu immediately began to treat his body and took the time to recenter himself. The sun was bright in the courtyard the next morning. Ha! Fists and legs attacked, one after another. 4 hits, 8 hits, 16 hits, 17 hits, 18 hits, 19 hits. After recovering, Suyu was surprised to discover that, after yesterday's battles, universal stroke had been greatly sharpened. Also, the stagnant universal stroke had been sharpened to the stage of top class. Now, Suyu could keep attacking consecutively without stopping, an infinite consecutive attack. The improvement in universal stroke was assuredly due to all the battle experience Suyu had gained the day before when he used universal stroke multiple times. More importantly, however, were the consequences of Jiang Zhixie's immense suppression. Universal stroke had, as a result, sharpened immensely. If that old hack knew that I owed it to him for breaking into universal stroke's top class, I'm sure he wouldn't be too pleased. At the same time, Suyu also accidentally discovered that within his brain an engraved 10-inch-long purple dragon had been washed by the spirit serum of the 9-dragon cauldron. As a result, an inch of the purple dragon had turned to crystal, which was very similar in color to that of Suyu's crystalline pupils. Inspired, Suyu activated his pupils. After a moment, he grinned. His eyesight had improved yet again. Before, he could see tiny things that were over 600 feet away. Now, he could discover a mosquito's leg 1,600 feet away. As long as there was nothing to block his view, Suyu could see every detail within a mile. Such eyesight was almost unbelievable. What made him even happier was that, after activation, his time-warping power had doubled. Before, in quiet conditions, when 1 hour passed in the outside world 10 hours would pass for him. Now, when 1 hour passed in the outside world, 20 would pass for him. Under agitated conditions, like battle conditions, his time had formerly been tripled. Now, it was quadrupled. When I meet Chen Tianan again, I'm sure I'll beat him, just by using universal stroke. Suyu clenched his fists. Knock knock. Brother Suyu, sister has come to find you. Shuan Leffey was outside the courtyard. Her sweet face eyed the Silver King's courtyard with envy. Suyu was rather surprised. Why was Shuan Leffey looking for him? What's the matter? Suyu stood at the courtyard gate with no intention of letting her in. Shuan Leffey pursed her lips. Petty. I came to find you because I wanted to go to the Twilight Mountains, where we can hunt and kill demonic beasts together. Hunt and kill demonic beasts. Suyu was intrigued. With the few taels of silver given as an allowance to students, it was difficult to purchase the training materials he required. Depending on just the few taels of silver distributed to students, it was hard to purchase enough training materials. Come on in, Suyu invited her in. Let's go talk in your room. I have top secret information, Leffey said, her voice low. A ray of bright light flashed through Suyu's eyes. A while later, they sat in Suyu's room. The room was simple but very clean. It was quiet and peaceful, and the clear windows were bright. Leffey took a deep breath longingly, and did not hide her envy as she said, I really hope to achieve this someday. As she spoke, she sat down on the bed. Spill it. What top secret information? Leffey laid back onto the bed. Lying horizontally, her exquisite curves were exposed. Her petite body had really developed quite well. Leffey sat up, and with a mysterious look, she lowered her voice and said, I heard that in the Twilight Mountains, someone found 2 Category 1 demonic beasts. They are guarding a cavern with many precious spiritual things inside, which all the golden students are after. Oh, 2 Category 1 demonic beasts. Suyu was slightly moved. Demonic beasts were rather intelligent, and the things they guarded were usually treasures. Even the silver students were interested. These treasures were surely worth a lot. Besides me, who else have you invited? Suyu asked. With just the 2 of them, they could not take on 1 Category 1 demonic beast, let alone 2. Crash. Ah, what are you all doing? This is the Silver King's courtyard. There was a commotion below. A woman screamed that someone had broken in. Make way. We got a report that Suyu is taking advantage of a female student. Suyu paled, and he turned his face away. Leffey arranged her face and swiftly removing her top. At the same time, she ruffled the fabric to make it look rumpled. She took out some chili powder and rubbed it in her eyes. Tears rolled out as she laid on the bed. She looked as though she had been violated. How could Suyu not understand? He had been framed. Whoosh. Suyu took big steps over, his hands clasped onto Leffey's shoulder. Leffey resisted with a cool face. Bang bang. The sounds of people urgently coming up the stairs came from the floor below. There was no time to spare. Once they barged in and saw the scene, he would not be able to explain. Universal stroke. Suyu displayed his full power. This was an emergency. Leffey smeared, I am prepared. In an instant, she had silver armor between her eyes, allowing her to withstand her opponent's consecutive hits. 4 hits, 8 hits, 16 hits, 32 hits, 64 hits. Leffey's smear froze and beads of sweat dotted her forehead. Her sweet face was bright red and pained. What is going on? Doesn't he only have 16 consecutive hits? Why does it seem like he's hitting me much more than just 16 times? It feels infinite. It was easy to imagine the damage that 16 consecutive hits, executed within a brief moment, could inflict. Even dripping water could wear away a rock with time. Imagine, then, what legs and hands were capable of. Crack. The armor completely shattered. With a cry, Leffey flew back and crashed into the bed's headboard. Her blood boiled and her head spun. At that moment, Suyu came over in a flash, picked Xuan's displaced shirt and swiftly twisted it into a hemp rope. He speedily tied Leffey up and dangled her from the window. Before leaving, he picked up a piece of dirty cloth and stuffed it into Leffey's mouth. The courtyard was in a quiet location. Without standing under the window, it would be hard to realize that a girl was hanging from it. Crash. In that instant, the door was kicked down and a line of people entered. The leader was Jiang Zishi, whose injuries were not yet healed. Search. Jiang Zishi looked around coldly, a murderous look in his eyes. The people behind him had already started searching everywhere without waiting for his instructions. Below the bed, in the cupboards, in the luggage, they searched everywhere, but nothing significant turned up. They looked at each other and quietly waited for Jiang Zishi to speak. What are you all doing? Suyu's face was cold as he scolded them. Jiang Zishi stared at him. We received a tip-off that you were violating a girl from the institute. Where did you hide her? He asked viciously. Ha ha. Suyu turned his anger into laughter. All right. All right. Oh Jiang Zishi, if you want to point out my crimes, just do it. But you slandering me for violating female students without proof, I will not take it lightly. You all can search all you want. Search all you want. If you don't find proof, I will immediately head to Housemaster Yi and ask him to give his judgment on this event. The people within the room were instantly stunned. They had come to the search with the utmost confidence, sure they would conquer Suyu, but, in the end, they could not find any abused girl and were forced into a passive position. If Housemaster Yi were really alerted to this incident and found out that they had purposely framed a student, no one would be able to save them from his ruthlessness. Jiang Zishi also realized the tricky nature of his current situation. He already had a record, and if he were to be caught by Housemaster Yi again, he might not make it out with only minor injuries. Shuan Leffey had failed to uphold her part in the plan. It was her fault he was now forced into passivity. Since this must be only a misunderstanding, we shall be leaving. Jiang Zishi's face was cold as he turned to leave. Hold it! Suyu shouted coldly. You all barged into my courtyard. You think you can come and go as you please. I have to report this incident to Housemaster Yi and ask him to serve justice. Jiang Zishi's eyes were cold as he turned around. So what do you want? He asked. They were all smart enough people. Did Jiang Zishi, the wise old man, not detect Suyu's intention to extort some benefits out of this situation? It's not what I want, but what you want. Suyu said angrily. You all destroyed my clean reputation. What should you do? Jiang Zishi silently hated him. Not only did he not hold the upper hand over his rival, but he had fallen into the passive position. Jiang Zishi waved his hand and dismissed his men, throwing out a token with a phrase engraved on it, Order of Unlimitedness. Something you can't buy. You should be satisfied. The Order of Unlimitedness. Suyu raised his eyebrows. The item came from the depository of Buddhist scriptures, and there were only 10 tokens in total. According to the rules of the depository of Buddhist scriptures, one could only enter the depository once every 6 months. But, with the Order of Unlimitedness, one could ignore the rule. Moreover, the holder of the token could enter more than just the first level. They had access to the second level as well, which only gold students qualified for, and the third level, which only demon students qualified for. This token was awarded to people in the high levels of the institute. Unless someone had a direct relationship with a token holder, students did not have the chance to touch one. The item was incredibly precious. Jiang Zishi also had no choice. He had tried to frame Suyu, and if Housemaster Yi found out about it he would be in deep trouble. So, he used the ultimate bribe to pay off Suyu and ensure his silence regarding the incident. Since it is a misunderstanding, then I shall leave it as such. I just hope that next time Jiang Zishi will think before he acts. Suyu said meaningfully. He put the matter to rest. With the token, he had sufficiently benefited from the situation. With a cold face, Jiang Zishi left in a huff. Suyu waited for the group of people to be completely gone before he went to the window and pulled up Shuan Leffey, who had been dangling in the air, and threw her on the floor. Terrified, Shuan Leffey's face was as pale as paper. She kneeled on the floor as her thin body quivered. The Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 20. I'm sorry, I was forced. Shuan Leffey's eyes were filled with tears, like a wronged lamb. How could Suyu believe her biased words? He searched her clothes and belongings. A wooden box among her things caught his attention. Top-grade spirit elixir. Suyu opened it up in shock, his eyes narrowing as he realized what had been inside. How could Shuan Leffey, with her family background, have obtained such a precious elixir? Tell me, before my anger gets the best of me, tell me the truth. Suyu walked towards Shuan Leffey slowly. Shuan Leffey blinked fearfully. She was short of breath, her anxiety evident in the great rises and deep falls of her chest. It's Qin Feng. He made me do it. I'm sorry. It was Qin Feng after all. Had he collaborated with Jiang Zishi? Qin Feng, the second among the gold students, was at level 4 lower tier. His power was terrifying. It was him who had stolen Suyu's childhood love. It was him who viciously framed Suyu, again and again. Qin Feng, if I don't seek revenge, I, Suyu, am not truly a man. Suyu clenched his fists tightly. Shuan Leffey curled deeper into the bed like a little lamb. Can you let me go? I won't dare to do it again, she said quietly. Suyu looked towards her, his eyes cold and distant. Finally, he waved his hand and signaled for her to leave. Remember, don't do this again. Both Suyu and Shuan Leffey existed at the bottom levels of society, and so Suyu empathized with Shuan Leffey's hardships. Since this scheme to frame him had turned out to be a blessing in disguise, he saw no reason to not show Shuan Leffey mercy. Having been released, Shuan Leffey, greatly relieved, hurriedly fixed her clothes before slipping out fearfully. Oh, hey, by the way, is it true about the demonic beasts on the Twilight Mountains? Are they really guarding treasure? Suyu asked. Hearing Suyu call out to her, Shuan Leffey's petite body froze and she turned back tearfully. She nodded her head, lightly, like a chick pecking rice, and said, yes, it is true. This is the map. She quickly dropped the map before making her escape, out and away from the Silver King. Only when she was far enough away from him did she start to cry. She felt wronged and humiliated. Oh, I wish I were anywhere but here. He took my spirit elixir, and even my body was exposed, all for nothing. She thought about how many playboys she had interacted with, how none of them had taken advantage of her, how she had been able to protect herself. Until Suyu, who had trapped her so easily. She sobbed uncontrollably. Worst of all, Suyu didn't even seem genuinely interested in her. Of course, the most important matter was the spirit elixir. She had planned on using it after she completed the task, just in case she failed and had to return the spirit elixir to Qin Feng. But now, she had not completed the task and had lost the elixir. She did not know how to explain herself to Qin Feng. Suyu sat cross-legged in the courtyard and looked at the top-grade spirit elixir with a smile on his face. The strong power it contained was much higher than that of the middle-grade elixir, and the low-grade was barely worth mentioning in relation to the top-grade elixir he now held in his hands. Suyu adjusted his position until he was comfortable, and promptly swallowed the elixir. Its strong power spread through his limbs like wildfire. Quickly, Suyu started sweating profusely all over his body. Sweat drops trickled out from his nostrils. He was absolutely drenched. 2 hours later, he awoke. Suyu's eyes flicked open. Beams of light shot from his pupils. He clenched his fists and a strong sense of power spread throughout his veins. He felt as though his whole body was full of strength. He felt like he could kill a large bull with one punch. Is this what level 3 feels like? It is not too different than what I've felt before, Suyu exclaimed excitedly. He realized that he could now defeat a powerful level 3 student like Chen Tian'an, all thanks to the strength of Universal Stroke, a low-level technique. Suyu was so close to so much power. However, Suyu did not feel satisfied with himself. He needed to be stronger. From now on, my opponents will only get stronger. There is no way I can just depend on Universal Stroke. Suyu instantly took out the Order of Unlimitedness, his lips curling into a smile. Jiang Zhishi, this whole so-called trap really worked out well for me, didn't it? Half a day later, though it had only been a month since his last visit, Suyu was at the depository of Buddhist scriptures again. As per usual, the old man guarding the place was sitting on the staircase, his expression indifferent. Seeing Suyu approach, he coldly stated, within half a year, you can only enter once. The old man's face was unpleasant as he muttered, I have previously told you that Cloud Shadow is hard to train. Not even 1 out of 1,000 people succeed. I warned you that you would not succeed. Now, you return in defeat. Now, you want to change your technique. Well, too late. Awkwardly, Suyu held up his hand. I know, but I have the Order of Unlimitedness. Suyu handed over the coin and the old man's cheeks moved slightly. He stared at Suyu intently for a moment. How had this boy, a silver-ranked student, received the Order of Unlimitedness? It was curious indeed, but it was not his place to investigate. Instead, the old man merely asked another question. How is your Cloud Shadow training progressing? He had hoped Suyu had quit, as he had previously pegged Suyu as an overachiever who failed to actually achieve. Suyu blushed slightly. Cloud Shadow is hard to master. I have only trained to stage 1 top class, he said quietly. On average, a student with Suyu's qualifications would take at least 6 months to reach his current level with Cloud Shadow. However, due to his time-cheating abilities, he had been able to reach his current stage. The old man's face suddenly changed. His pupils shrank as he asked, "Just half a month and you have trained to stage 1 top class?" "Unbelievable. Suspicious." The old man glared. "Prove it. If you are lying to me, you know the consequences," the old man said coldly. It was hard for him to believe that among the silver students, someone could successfully train this obscure, light body cultivation technique. For this technique, even the highly skilled would find it hard to get started without at least a full month of training, but Suyu had somehow managed to train to level 1 top class within 2 weeks. Of course, the old man did not know Suyu had a time cheat technique, which allowed him to train 10 times faster than other students. Now, after increasing his time cheat power, he could increase the speed to 20 times faster than usual. His training speed would be even faster than before. Suyu, after the old man challenged him, promptly displayed the light body cultivation technique. His light body was like the cloud's shadow, light and fluid, like floating duckweed. He was elegance and agility combined, never once slowing down. The one man's face was one of shock. Realizing he had forgotten himself, he quickly converted his shocked expression and stepped clear of the staircase, speaking with his usual cold tone. "You have the right to enter the 2nd and 3rd levels, but you can only take away 1 skill. That rule remains the same." "Okay." Suyu flew past the old man in a flash. Suyu had seen all the skills on the 1st level before. There was nothing left which caught his eye. Only the 2nd and 3rd levels had the skills he needed. At the entrance of the 2nd level there was a stone sign. Level 2, 49 Assault Cultivation Techniques, 490 Assisting Techniques. Suyu clicked his tongue. Level 1 had 101 Assault Cultivation Techniques and 491 Assisting Techniques. Level 2 had less than half of the number of techniques available on Level 1. Of course, the techniques in Level 2 were all medium level, and the attacks on Level 1 couldn't even compare. With fewer techniques, Suyu was more serious in choosing his selection. A long while later. Medium-level technique, Tempest. Suyu's eyes lit up. After successfully training this technique, there will be cold wind generated between leg techniques. After training Tempest to completion, the cold wind will solidify water vapor into ice, and there will be wind and snow generated between kicks. This is the top tier of the medium-level techniques. Its strength is comparable to top-level techniques. This technique's basic requirement is a strong foundation in leg techniques. A core requirement is strong comprehension skills. To those who choose to attempt this technique, please be careful. If you do not have the determination found in only 1 in a million, do not waste your time. Suyu flipped open the book, and his vision instantly swam with the amount of information packed onto 1 page. The words written within were not only choppy but hard to pronounce. Cloud Shadow's technique was considered hard to comprehend, but compared to this book, it was nothing. Suyu looked at the book for 10 minutes and did not understand a single sentence. Suyu was not discouraged, however, and was instead more motivated than ever. The harder it was to comprehend a technique, the more powerful it was. It also meant there were not many other trainees, and it would be difficult for his opponents to counter the move. Suyu activated his time control. Time sped up 20 times faster than normal. To outsiders, Suyu only looked at the book for half an hour, but he actually spent a total of 10 hours memorizing it. In actual fact, he had already spent 10 hours memorizing it. After that, Suyu continued reviewing the techniques available. Ghost Spirit Technique, Medium-Level Technique. Suyu discovered the technique which Chen Tianan was training. He took one look at the text before setting it down. Although the technique was powerful, it required a foundation in poisons, which he did not have. Oh, demonic eyes. What's this? When he had browsed up to the last assault cultivation technique, a black-covered gloomy book grabbed his attention. Demonic Eyes, Medium-Level Technique. After training, it can attack the soul. The lower tier can cause the victim to be dizzy, and the upper tier can cause death. It is extremely dangerous. The only basic requirement is to be gifted in soul energy. This technique is extremely powerful. Because it involves the soul, there are great risks involved in training, as the soul could easily retaliate. For those gifted in soul energy, please select carefully. For those not gifted in soul energy, there is a 90% chance of death. Suyu clicked his tongue. Demonic Eyes had unique requirements. Am I gifted in soul energy? Flipping open to the top page, there was a small line of words. To check if you are gifted in soul energy, you can refer to the first 10 words on the first page of this technique book. The words hold a weak soul attack. If you can read the first word clearly, it means you are weakly gifted in soul energy. If you can read the second word clearly, you are average. Third word, above average. Fourth word, rather strong. Suyu flipped past the page and saw the introduction to the technique had 10 rather weird-looking words. They were blurry, the letters swimming across the page as if they were alive, which made it difficult for Suyu to read them clearly. Even so, strangely, Suyu could distinctly read the first 7 words. According to the previous passage, his ability to see 7 words clearly meant he had a terrifying gift in soul energy. Suyu blinked in disbelief. His body was entirely mediocre. Mediocre physique, mediocre perception. He was only capable of his current strength due to the 9-dragon cauldron. To suddenly discover his terrifying gift in soul energy was difficult for Suyu to process. After Suyu took a moment to sit in shock, he came to an understanding. It must be the result of the combination of the souls of the 2 Suyus. Thus, my soul is twice as powerful as others my age. Suyu rejoiced. He immediately memorized demonic eyes. After that, of the 490 available assisting techniques, Suyu saw nothing that interested him. I wonder what level 3 is like. Maybe it's all top-level techniques. Looking upwards, Suyu leapt to level 3. Level 3 was only open to the Institute's 10 great demon students. Every technique kept there was nothing less than incredible.